welcome to the Natural Birth Summit. Today's session, we are talking about the benefits of natural birth. And for that discussion, we are fortunate to have with us Dianne Garland. Hi, Dianne.
Hi there.
Good to have you with us. Dianne has been working in birth and midwifery for 40 years. And throughout that time, she has held on to a passion for supporting women to make the journey to the arrival of their baby in a natural and physiological way that gives them a great start to their life as an extended family, as a bigger family. And Dianne has experience in all settings, at home, in hospital units, in birth centres, and she has been operating a website called Midwife Expert since 2005. And she's really currently now a researcher and a writer and a teacher, sharing the skills that she has learned with the midwives around the world who are eager to hear and learn. So fantastic to have you with us, Dianne. I'm going to get us started here by asking the question. For this is the first session at the conference that expecting mothers are going to see. They come here because the title is Natural Birth Summit, and the program is all around natural birth and the different aspects of that. And so what I wanted to do is get us started to say, why is natural birth important?
Thank you. Well, if we look at maybe from a mother's point of view, first of all, who is the primary, person within this concept, I think for women, it's understanding and trusting their own bodies. Now, to do that, to enhance a normal, natural, physiological birth, whichever word someone likes to use, we need to understand our hormonal interplay, which is building up all through pregnancy. So by the time we get to about 38 weeks, we're getting to the point where that fine interplay isn't just within our own bodies, but it's about preparing the baby for birth as well. So we hear a lot about oxytocin, the hormone. Some people call it the hormone of love. It's the hormone that gets the baby in, will bring the baby out. And that's the most primary hormone that is interlaid around the whole birthing process.
Okay.
Sadly, what's happened over my career is that one of the interventions that has become so commonplace is introducing artificial oxytocin called Pitocin, I know in your country, not in mine. And we know from research that this artificial hormone interrupts the receptors in your brain. So it actually, to some degree, blocks your own natural oxytocin. Now, oxytocin has lots of facets to it. And one is that not only does it actually produce those hormones of contraction, but it prepares us for labour and birth. And that preparation is related through to the baby. It prepares the baby's hormone for that first breath, for its transition from being inside us to outside.
Okay.
But it interplays with a lot of other hormones as well. And that preparation starts with prostaglandin, which again is another hormone that sadly over the years has become more commonplace to induce labour. And I'm not anti-induction. There's always a time and a place for an intervention. There's a time and a place for an intervention during labour. But it's become so commonplace that we've lost the thread of what those hormones do in preparation for natural birth. And the other side of those hormones is what we tended to call the fight and flight hormones. So the adrenaline, the noradrenaline, those hormones that actually put us in a safe place. And one of the things that I talk about with natural birth is that you need to feel in a safe place. Right. That's about your environment, that's about the people around you, that's how you've prepared. Have you written a birth plan? And all of those things build up your confidence in your ability to give birth, which sadly over 40 years I've seen taken away from us as women. And as midwives, we fought so hard to maintain and secure that environment for women. If we can make women feel confident in their body's ability to labour naturally and give birth naturally, then what we can start doing is reducing those hormones that are the fight and flight, the adrenaline, the noradrenaline, the catecholamines, which we need, remember, to get that safe place. But when we reduce those, we increase our own natural painkillers called endorphins. And as we increase the endorphins, the chemical receptors of oxytocin, that hormone of labour and birth, start to increase. So this very fine interplay that's happening within our bodies at the end of pregnancy and the beginning of labour. And that's really a basic fundamental understanding what our hormones are doing in preparation for labour and birth. What else is important is obviously when we're looking at the research about what are the benefits from a mother's point of view, first of all, is there's good research saying that in an undisturbed, quiet, secure environment where all those hormones are working together, what we can find is that labour can be shorter than if it's intervened with. And that's good research, that's worldwide. I've been very fortunate over my career to work around the world and had the even more honoured role to be able to share labours and births with women. And when you see women in their own cultures, bearing in mind that for many women, birth, labour and birth are almost like a rite of passage from being this woman, maybe already a mother, a partner, a wife, transition into being a mother. And when you see that in their own natural environments where there isn't the intervention that sadly us in the Western world have taken on without perhaps always understanding the implications of what we're doing. And the hormonal one is certainly one of the big ones. So we want to prepare women so that they feel able to make those choices that are informed, that they have consent, that they trust the practitioner who's caring for them, whether that's a midwife, an obstetrician, they may well work with doulas, traditional birth attendants, that we all work together for safety for that mother and baby. So by default, if we understand what's happening hormonal, psychologically with our bodies, we do reduce the interventions that have now become so commonplace. And please, I stress again, I'm not anti-intervention. Interventions need to be appropriate and not just for every woman. Induction of labour is now universally done much earlier than for many women is their natural progression ready for birth. And that does have a huge implication. So preparing women and their knowledge of those hormones will actually make her feel more confident. She can feel very empowered because she understands what's happening to her body. So having that non-disturbed environment enhances all of those hormones, and it's creating that environment. When women birth undisturbed, they will start to find freedom to move around. That freedom may be simple. Maybe she's just going to lean if she's at home against, I've seen women leaning against washing machines, even when they're running, that little vibration seems to help. Walking up and down the stairs, they're free to get into whatever position they find comfortable. And yes, some women will want to lay down. But if they're going to lay down, we try and make sure they understand what's happening physiologically to their internal bodies.
Right.
And actually be on their side rather than just being flat like they might be encouraged to do, particularly if they're in a hospital and particularly if they have some of the very strong pain reliefs that are on offer, epidurals, and narcotic drugs. So giving the women the space, the understanding, the confidence will all benefit them as they go through labour and birth.
That's a great introduction. And I think that what you're, one of some of the key points there, if I can just reflect back, we're talking about keeping the fight or flight, the fear hormones, the danger hormones, keeping those away as much as possible from this whole process. And that's not easy, but it can be done by developing your own understanding of the process in your body and being open to the ways that you can build up an approach, an environment, the support, the people around you that can help you to keep the fight or flight in its place and allow the oxytocin to flow. And I think the interplay of that was interesting. I wondered, made me think about the interplay. Oxytocin, is that only created in the mother, or is there any oxytocin creation happen in the baby in this late pregnancy, 37, 38 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, oxytocin is an amazing, hormone, and there are receptors throughout our bodies. And actually, men do have a little bit of oxytocin as well. Remember, it's called, one of my wonderful colleagues in Australia, Sarah Buckley, and she calls it the hormone of love. She changes the whole wording that we use about the hormones that we know are there. So calling it the hormone of love is so beautiful, because we create that when we're creating our babies, and some of that will come from the partner. And if you're thinking about creating that environment to welcome your baby into, you want huge amounts of that oxytocin. And we know that that is circulating throughout the whole labour, and some will go through to the baby. And so the baby's actually preparing itself to be welcomed into this world. And that's why so many cultures call it a transition, because it's transiting from the woman, but also from a fetus inside you to becoming your baby. So yes, we do get oxytocin from lots of different environments. And you're right, if we keep our stress hormones, the hormones of excitement, Sarah calls them, and we do all need a bit of excitement. If you're waiting for your carer to arrive, you want to feel confident she's going to arrive on time, or you're going to get to your chosen birth environment. So we do need a little bit of that hormone excitement. But what we want to do is balance it as the oxytocin and the endorphins start. And I see that in practice, women who are really feeling uncomfortable physically and mentally before either we arrive at the birth or they arrive to us. And within minutes, the whole environment can change and our oxytocin surge. So often we hear of women who actually birth really quickly, either when we arrive and or when they actually arrive with us. So it's an incredibly powerful hormone. And that power is understood even if it's used synthetically. But that's why it has to be regulated. And that's the problem. We don't regulate it to an individual woman. There's usually a regime, a guideline. And that's standard. It doesn't individualize the nature of the woman. It doesn't individualize how she is in the process, her previous experiences or concerns. It's just a standard. And that's not how we believe oxytocin works. It's not a straight line. It's waves. And sometimes the waves go a bit quieter. And sometimes they pick up again.
I have heard, and I was going to say, I have heard in terms of synthetic oxytocin, I have heard of institutions, hospitals that change the amount of oxytocin synthetic oxytocin they're giving a woman based on the availability of space in the labour ward, in the rooms. I don't know if you've heard of that. That seems quite shocking, really, to me.
Yeah, I mean, we would not in the UK be putting oxytocin up synthetically until the woman was in a delivery labour room, because it does need careful monitoring. Obviously, the woman's reaction to it, what the contractions are doing, and of course, the baby, who we've barely mentioned so far. So it is a very, very powerful, strong hormone. There was a time where synthetically they tried to produce pumps that would almost pulsate oxytocin. But even that's very difficult because it's not individualized. You know, our
Right.
body, like any hormone, produces what we need at that particular time in our life. And for women in natural labour, that will be different. It will be different even between her own labours, let alone in the woman who, if you're in a hospital or a birth centre, is in the other room. So oxytocin in two women is never going to be the same. And
Right.
that's why it is such a powerful drug and needs to be so carefully monitored. And that in itself restricts the woman, because she may not be able to be so mobile because she's going to have the drip attached. Even if the pump has got a battery, she's still got to move that around with her. She may be able to sit on a birth ball, so that helps with some mobility and positioning for the baby to transverse through her pelvis. But because it is a powerful drug, sadly, what often happens, women will move into a stronger pain relief. And that often is a narcotic, which has implications for the baby. And of course, an epidural, which totally changes the whole process.
Right. Okay. And that's contrasting the the route of escalating intervention that you've just highlighted there with the natural process where the oxytocin flows based on the signals of the mother and the baby and the interaction of that. And what is likely to be the difference in the downstream in the experience of labour and birth when between those two pathways.
So if the women choose with the right information and knowledge for her, then obviously she can make sure that she has all that understanding of what the implications are for her baby, not just for herself.
Right.
So baby, those hormones, as I said, do prepare the baby for developing as the labour progresses to be outside the mother's environment. We know as well that if there's an intervention, many of those interventions can actually impinge the diversity of the baby's microbiome. Now, that
Right.
might be a new science to many women. It's been around for about 20 years, so about half of my career. But there are still many colleagues and women who don't know about the microbiome. And that's the baby's environment, its flora. So the microbiome is built up as the baby actually progresses. We believe that some of the microbiome comes from the father and the mother. It develops during the baby's in utero life, and it certainly is transmitted from the mother during a vaginal birth.
Right.
Now, what can impinge on that, we believe to the best of our knowledge at the moment, is certainly antibiotics in labour, which are often given very routinely if your waters have gone. Certainly in the UK, if we know that you've got group B streptococcus, but please bear in mind in the UK, we don't do routine testing. If you have a C-section, if you have an instrumental birth, those all immediately will mean that you're going to be offered, hopefully the word is offered, IV antibiotics. But the microbiome is also built up when that baby develops. And one of the benefits of a natural birth, because of that environment we've created, the baby can come immediately to skin. And the baby will pick up microbiome from the mother's skin to skin. It will pick up more microbiome, more diversity if she breastfeeds. And certainly one of the big things that we find with physiological labour and birth is that more women are likely to breastfeed.
Right.
And all those implications for the baby with breastfeeding. One of the other big benefits for a baby with any sort of natural childbirth is optimal cord clamping, sometimes called delayed cord clamping. But again, thinking about the words we use, which is part of what we're putting together, is that we don't like the word delayed. That sounds negative, and we want to be positive. So optimal cord clamping, which in an instrumental delivery, a C-section, is if you're very fortunate and have a very enlightened carer, will aim for at least 1 minute. That's the national guidelines in the UK. But if it's left unclamped, the blood flow will give the baby extra blood. It'll give what it needs, which is about 30% of extra blood even after a minute. So the babies will build up iron stores for over a year. They will get more stem cells that help with tissue development. It will help if any tissue is being damaged. So it has huge knock-on effects for the baby just by the process of doing a natural birth. And that goes back to the issue about making sure that you have written down your requests and that you understand them, that you get consent for anything that is requested of you, and that those birth companions around you, whether it's your partner, a doula, midwives, that they understand what you want to do and why.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you. So if I can kind of summarize where we are now then. So what you painted a picture of the letting the body, the mother's body, the baby develop in the way that they're designed to develop, to have that there's although there are phases in pregnancy, labor, birth, actually that's a system, and elements that of one part of that one phase, things that happen in one phase have a huge impact in other phases and in long-term health. And so that we interrupt that really as a last resort, that should be the case.
Yeah. And
unfortunately, often it isn't a last resort. It's a standard operating procedure, isn't it? So, and then I think you talked about the idea of being informed and giving consent and making sure that you have, mothers have the support and the people around them to ensure that they, wherever they are, wherever they've chosen to be or whether they happen to be at any point, that they can feel safe and supported, give the best chance for that oxytocin to flow and for their birth to progress naturally as their bodies have been designed to do it.
Absolutely. And I mean, the other part, again, we haven't mentioned a lot, but, you know, partners being involved. You know, we know how babies are created, but in a hospital environment, very often women feel reticent about asking their partners or their mothers or whoever's with them to give them a cuddle and a kiss and lots of touch. And that in itself all produces more oxytocin. But if you're attached to monitors that are bleeping at you and you've got a carer who's sitting there just watching the monitor instead of what they should do, be with you, partners often feel that they're pushed out of that situation and they don't feel comfortable to come up and give you a kiss and a cuddle because there's too many things attached to you. So that natural oxytocin in an open, safe environment is often not used. And women need that. We need to be touched and kissed and cuddled. But often it's very hard to do if you don't feel that you are in your safe environment. A skilled midwife will pick up those vibes. And, you know, even on a labour ward, I will often say, I'm just going out for 5 minutes. I'm not going far. If you need me, here's the buzzer. But it's giving them at least a few minutes where hopefully they will talk. That's a great oxytocin as well. Kissing, cuddling, without feeling they're being watched by us.
Yeah, and that's the benefits that flow from that, from the partner's involvement and those moments of connection and the benefits that flow for a long, long time, way past the birth, because they lead to families that are more mutually connected and feel together. And that has massive implications, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes. You know, we found that where partners were excluded, and certainly in some cultures they are still excluded, it's often a female, but that female has to be someone that you feel confident with, who will relay what your requests are and be your advocate. And so it may not be the automatic mum or mother-in-law or sister. It could be, and that's where doulas have often become so important, because they are there to support you, to be advocates. They don't have such an emotional involvement. They're there very much as your advocate. And sadly, during COVID, you can imagine a lot of that was taken away, which is why so many women in the UK actually opted to have home births, because then they could create the environment they wanted without saying, oh, you can't come in because you haven't been tested or whatever it is.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think doulas, just putting that a bit more on that role there, it's the advocacy part. There's that slight detachment, and there's that continuity that they bring, isn't there? And they can be responsible really for helping to ensure that there's the space for the woman to feel safe and to let her body continue to do what it's designed to do. Doulas can play a really important part in that, can't they?
Yeah, and many doulas will actually come from the woman's own community. That's not always necessary, but they need to understand what are the traditions of that culture, because they are very different. You know, even if you're third or fourth generation of whatever your ethnicity background is, you still have that within you. It's still there. And I see that in practice, women in the UK who might be third, fourth generation Asian women, whatever you want to suggest. And of course, the big impact that's happened with things like Ukraine, we're having to learn what are their traditions. It's
Right.
incredibly interesting time in midwifery. So yes, having a doula there who has had that continuity. Many of the doulas will meet the women very early on in their pregnancy. They'll build up that relationship. It's something we try and do in midwifery, with continuity of care and carer. But, you know, policies and procedures and timeframes and the workloads sometimes get in the way of that. However, after 40 years as a midwife, I feel very confident that whatever the background, the age of the woman, whatever, I can build up, I believe, a very good, safe, trusting relationship very quickly, just by that welcome. You know, hello, you're Susan,
Right.
my name's Dianne, that's what I like to be called. Just by that touch, learning what is an acceptable touch for that woman, get those oxytocins going. It may just be touching her hand. It doesn't have to be anything more. Feeling that she's, you know, in a secure environment. Nobody's going to walk into the door, you know, that people are going to knock. They're going to have respect on her privacy. All of these have a huge impact. And if you know that you're going to have some intervention, immediately the likelihood is you're going to have a different environment. People are going to be keen to get the drip in. They're going to be keen to get the monitor on. And again, I have to stress, this isn't about anti-intervention. This is us understanding what our bodies are designed to do within our own cultures.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's fantastic. So if we can move on to the next part then, which is, you know, what are the big choices if a woman has decided to follow the routes that we're talking about, and and feels they have the confidence to plan to choose a natural birth as the core part of their plan. What are the big things they need to think about and decide before the onset of labour?
So obviously having a confidence in your carer, obstetrician, midwife, whoever that is, that environment, what's available where you live. Is it home? Is it a birth centre? Is it a hospital? And then even more fundamental to that, choosing an environment, a physical environment. So do you want to be on land? Do you want to use birth balls? Do you want to use rebosos? There's lots of different forms of pain relief that doesn't interfere with that hormonal interbalance. One of the things that I've been very fortunate over the years to be involved with is water labour, water birth. And I purposely say different because for some women, water labour is fantastic. It helps them be mobile. They can move around in a pool. They can feel secure. They can feel that this is their environment, that they feel empowered because they've chosen it.
Yeah.
Some women will say, well, I'd like the water birth. Okay, so what are the benefits of the water birth? We've talked about the mobility. We know that's important. We know that all those hormones will build up naturally because I certainly don't advocate any intervention in the pool. So no narcotics, no drips, certainly no breaking of your waters. We leave everything natural. But the skill of the midwives is obviously to pick up if that is deviating, if it's changing.
Mm.
Is it just changing because actually, for whatever reason, you don't feel comfortable in there? Do we lower the lights? Do we turn music on or turn it off? Do we make sure that your birth companion feels very settled there? One of the things I said is that birth companions often don't always feel empowered to be involved. Well, they can be very involved if they want to. If she's in a pool, it may be very physical. She may be able to do some massage. I teach women with small massage balls for their shoulders, which, and again, a lot of women like. It helps release more oxytocins. The partner may be heavily involved with making sure that the water is kept at a good temperature, that in labour she finds comfortable. Slightly different in birth. There's a level for the baby to pretend it's still in utero for a short moment in time.
Yeah, by bringing the temperature up towards body temperature.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. So the environment can change, both the physical environment that she's in, i.e. a pool, but also the outside environment. So we don't get that disturbed environment because we create what feels right for that woman. But for the woman, it is very much about the mobility, what we call the flotation sensation. That's one phrase that is often used. We often call it the R effect. I think my colleague Barbara Harper is speaking later on one of the seminars, and Barbara certainly introduced me many, many years ago to the R effect. She put wording to what we see. Women are all uncomfortable on dry land, and they get into this pool and the shoulders go down. Oh, that feels wonderful. The analogy we often use again for women, particularly if women haven't always thought about it before they arrive at a birth centre particularly, is, you know, what would you do at the end of a long, hard day? How would you relax? Well, I'd make sure everything was fine at home. Yep, that's creating your environment. Okay. Yes, I'd probably run a bath. Wonderful. And what would you do in that environment? I might have candles, which, yep, and there are LED candles, so you don't need to have proper candles. I'd get myself a drink. Okay, fantastic. We want to keep you hydrated if you're in a pool. I might put my music on. And in labour, I still want that environment that's quiet. So I might shut the door, but I wouldn't lock it. Because we said about how physiological natural labour can speed up. In the water, the research seems to say it gets quicker. So we don't want a locked door where we couldn't get to you if you need help. So shut the door, that's what you feel comfortable with, but please don't lock it.
Okay.
And that's what we try and talk women through. And that can be done fairly quickly, often while we're filling the pool. if you look back to some of the very early work that was done by Michel Audin in France, he didn't have a pool when he had his birth centre in Pithiviers. But what he did have was showers, and we use showers quite a lot. But just the sound of running water was drawing women to it. And Michel was so aware of this that what he first did was put in a very large paddling pool. And women were attracted to that. And he realised that that wasn't, in this day and age, we'd probably say it's not fit for purpose.
Right.
Pools need to be fit for purpose. Many people's baths wouldn't be big enough. They wouldn't get the mobility. They wouldn't be able to relax. They wouldn't be able to float. So pools need to be big. And if they're going to be a portable pool, which many women may buy or hire, that needs to be fit for purpose. Otherwise, it could cause problems with your home insurance, which we do not want. So,
and a fair amount of anxiety in the birth process too.
Yes, exactly. So there goes the adrenaline again, way up. So
right.
purpose is the important thing. And that's something else I'd be saying to women if they're looking into using water. How big is the pool? We will often, in the birth centre, ask women to come along, have a look at our environment, see how big our pool is. Without the water in it, we can ask the women to get in and out to show us they're comfortable. What would they need? They might want flotation aids, because if they're going to float and be comfortable, they want something soft. So we talk all that through wherever we can. And it was difficult during COVID. A lot of that had to be done online. But that doesn't matter. We can do that online, share with women what they want. And then, of course, what they're going to bring in or have in their environment. I mentioned about drinking. Yes.
Yeah.
We need women to drink and eat in any labour. But when they're in a pool, because it's a hot environment, we want them to drink.
Right.
So it gets that hormonal interplay working because of that effect. And we see it. We hear it. Women will often shut their eyes. They want to close out whatever's around them. But that's because they feel secure. They go into a very, very deep transdescence, this very, very deep relaxation. Michel Audin and Sarah Buckley both talk about it quite a lot. And although sometimes people are concerned because you've got your eyes shut and they look so deeply entranced that they think they're in like a trance, but they're not. If we need to talk to them, if there is a need to do something different, or if we're about to do something, auscultate the baby's heartbeat, women are in their own zone. And people often say it's like a zone out. It's a secure environment. It's a transdescence. But if I need to listen to the baby's heart rate, or maybe it would be beneficial to change position, particularly in second stage, that's why it's wonderful in water. They can change position very easily, very quickly, but I do it quietly. So being able to get through to her, to break through that very quiet zone they're in, is very easy to do. It may just be just to touch the woman. Yeah. I looked after a woman who was deaf. I birthed 3 out of her 4 babies. And her and I had to build up an unusual way to break through that zoning out, because she can't hear me. And she lip reads. And she had her eyes shut. So we decided that if I tapped her on her shoulder, on her left shoulder, that was Dianne's going to do something. And I would wait for the nod, listen to baby's heartbeat. If I needed to do something more, maybe in the second stage, I wanted her to change position to make sure baby could rotate as it was coming out, then it would be a much more firm tap on the right shoulder.
Okay.
So the, you know, people will say things. You can always work around them. You can work with that woman, even in a more complex situation.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think that the way that you're talking is really encouraging in one particular aspect that struck me. you've talked about how continuity is what you're aiming for, and uh, often if you are transitioning into a hospital setting or you're in a hospital setting, that's not achievable with the health professionals, but it can be achievable with your partner, your birth partner, maybe a doula. But what I found really encouraging was you said that a skilled carer, midwife, obstetrician, a skilled person can develop rapport and connection quickly in that situation. So it doesn't have to be that it's, there is no connection or rapport. It can be developed quickly in that situation, and that's encouraging, because you're suggesting that it's all is not lost if you're in that situation. It can still be safe and allowing the process to flow, and the feeling of safety, allowing the oxytocin to come.
Yeah, and bringing things in with you. I've seen women come in not just with their own LED candles, because lights, particularly in a hospital, can be very bright, so you can still create an environment. Aromatherapy can be a bit controversial, because you do need, as in a carer, we do need to be trained to use aromatherapy oils safely for everyone.
Okay.
In that environment. And I will stress, I don't advocate oils that ever put in the birthing pool.
Okay.
Because of the crossover, if we carry on and do a water birth, it's a crossover for the baby. I've seen women bring in photos of their own children or someone else they love, and don't laugh, it could even be an animal. I'm a great animal lover, so I might take a photo of my cat with me. He's always on my phone, so wherever I am, I've got Ozzy with me. More positive things like words of affirmation.
Right.
You're doing a wonderful job. We're created to do this. There are so many words of affirmation, whether you have them as part of a hypnobirthing course, which is another form of pain relief, very often used alongside the use of water. But if you do change that environment, make sure they're laminated, and you can take them with you with a bit of blue tack and stick them somewhere where you can see them.
Right.
I've even seen women stick them over the clock on a labour ward, because clock watching is one of the worst things we do. We become so time orientated, and this is again where the interventions, you've only got an hour to push, and if you don't, we're going to have to get the doctors in. So I have seen women actually cover the clock in the delivery room with a word of affirmation, because we have watches and little fob watches. We don't need that great big clock on the wall that is often sadly opposite where the woman is. So you can take some of that environment with you. And I did mention showers. If for any reason there isn't a pool available, or there's someone already in it and you're waiting for them maybe to clean it and restart, then if there's a shower, they're wonderful, particularly for women who have got either a very early labour or a longish labour, or a baby that is occipito-posterior, so back to back is what we tend to call it. So then women can get quite bad back pain. But if you have a shower that's pummeling on her back, that in itself again releases more oxytocin. It's called the gate control theory.
Okay.
So that's another way of helping, using water, which might be the only option at that time, or that might only be the option. But with telemetry monitoring that isn't attached to a monitor, it's all done by telemetry like Wi-Fi, then those transducers, not only can they go in a pool, so if for any reason you have a complexity, what can I think of? Vaginal birth after cesarean. Very often continuous monitoring is offered, and the word is offered. But she could go in the shower with it attached, and yes, it certainly can go in the pool. It's having that information and asking that question, why? Why do I need this? And not feeling thwarted if someone only gives you one answer. because there's always going to be two. And that's why
Right.
that advocate, whether it's your partner, your midwife, your doula, your mum, I don't mind who it is, but someone who can advocate for you and say, oh,
Yeah.
you know, we asked about such and such, but you've only said this answer. What about, there must be another side to it. What are the implications if we don't do that? Or what are the implications if we do this instead? So I
Yeah.
would say to women, become like your children will in years to come. Be that perpetual why. Why is the sky? Why did it snow in Kent yesterday and everything came to a grinding halt? So yeah, and don't be afraid to ask those questions. Why? This is your birth, your body and your baby. And this for many women may be one of only maybe one or two occasions in their life where they can take that control. Because nobody has a right to touch you without informed consent. Nobody.
Yeah.
Human rights, not one person.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great message. I think it's a and you know, the layers of the onion of control, I think, are really interesting here, aren't they? Because you can't control the journey, all the things that will happen in your labor and birth. You don't control that. But what you can control is you can get information, you can learn, you can find the people who you think are going to help and support you properly. You can choose locations, you can choose you know, midwife teams or hospitals, obstetricians. You can choose all those things. That's your control. You can have techniques that you know help you keep the fear away, that help bring you back to that place where you can feel safe. Whatever's happening or happened, you can come back to that place to feel safe. That's where you get control, isn't it? It's not from controlling the outcomes. Nobody can do that. Nobody can offer that. It's a more nuanced concept of control. And it's about being informed. It's about feeling empowered. It's about having people around you to protect you and the space that you're in, and to challenge sometimes when things that you're being offered or asked or told to do, you're not quite sure you understand what's the purpose and who's that benefiting.
Yeah, and I mean, labour and birth is a continuum. You know, we talk about the first stage, the second stage, and we haven't mentioned really much about the third stage. But many
Right.
midwives are very confident to do a natural third stage, and we do those in the water as well. And I have done for the last 37 years that I've been doing water. You know, again, it's offering it. What are the benefits? We said optimal cord clamping, baby getting all those stem cells, the extra iron levels. But some women wouldn't want that. So if we're going to do
Yeah.
an intervention for third stage, that will change the time frame for us to be able to leave the cord attached. So there are so many facets to it, and that's why we say it's a continuum. It isn't as beautifully segmented as people would like to think it is. You know, one flows very easily often into the next one. And before we know it, women who are thinking, oh no, I'll get out for delivery, and suddenly the baby's coming. I'm not moving anywhere, thank you. I'm very comfortable here. I might want to change positions because I can get
Yeah.
into a very deep squat in a pool. Many of us in our cultures would not feel confident to be in a deep squat. In the water they can. I see it a lot when we go abroad. You know, part of women's daily lives and activities, they're squatting, but our culture don't do it. But in the water they can. So they
Yeah.
can actually anatomically help their babies to negotiate through the pelvis in a really good position because they've got the buoyancy and the weightlessness of the water. So
Yeah.
one that we hadn't really encompassed, but there are so many benefits, and that's why part of my role is to educate parents, but more importantly educate colleagues, because we've lost our way over the last 40 years and we need to redirect and re-support colleagues. They're not going to feel confident if they have never ever encountered or had exposure to a physiological, normal, natural labour and birth. And that, I believe, is my passion and my role for as long as I can possibly do it.
And that is coming through loud and clear. That's fantastic. Dianne, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. We could talk for another 2 days probably, and still be covering new stuff. And that's the nature of this topic, isn't it? But that's a fantastic introduction for pregnant mothers and their partners. Hopefully, they're watching too. To you're curious about natural birth. What is it? Why is it important? What's going to help you to realize a natural birth if you decided to go down that path? And we've covered a lot of ground. I think that there's a lot of places that people can go to find out more, but they've got some context. They've got quite a lot of information. I think particularly it was worth spending that time on oxytocin. And there's a lot of hooks here that people can go on with, and so that's been absolutely wonderful. Can you tell us before we go, in terms of people wanting to know more about you and your work, things that I know you've written books, you've got your website. Where would you guide people in terms of wanting to learn more about you and from you?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the website, there's a link there. You can email me. I get lots of emails from all over the world with parents asking, particularly if there's a complexity, could I use water because I've got a high BMI, or I had a big hemorrhage last time, and we talk all that through on emails. I do Zoom sessions as well, for small groups. They are only ever small. And yes, I'm very fortunate. I do travel, but the website will just give you mainly a contact, and then we go from there. If you type me in, all I would say is make sure you put double N that's on here, because there is a colleague who's got a similar name, but she only has one N. And then you
Dianne with 2 N's.
Dianne with 2 N's, yeah. So yeah, please do contact me. That's what I'm here for. Yes, I travel, but it's always out of office if I'm not able to reply. So you're not going to think, oh, has she forgotten me? And yeah, I learn something every day from women, from colleagues, and certainly when I travel the world, I'm very fortunate in learning something new every single day.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dianne. We're going to sign off, and really appreciate that.